Hey guys, Paul Sam. Welcome to part 2 of our Hasegawa 132 Focke-Wulf D9 video build. So yeah, back with part 2. We're starting off where we left off last time. We're going to get all those seams all sanded back, filled if required, bit of rescribing, get the canopy on. We're going to then prime it, get all the base camo down, and get well underway on this build. So not bad progress on this at all for 2 parts. So without further ado, let's get on with the build and get cracking. Right, picking up where we left off last time, the glue's been dry now for about a day. We're back with our UMP sanders, and we're going to very, very lightly sand these seams. We don't need to go mad. The seam lines are not very pronounced at all. Where we do need to go quite heavy, we've got a bit of tape on one side to protect any detail that's there. There's a little bit of recessed detail there. So we put a little bit of masking tape. You can very lightly sand over it and it doesn't affect that area. Once you're done, you can take the tape off and then just very lightly go over it with a sponge to kind of blend it back into each other. So UMP sanders doing their job absolutely brilliant here. And then the wings. Now, like I say, this is probably the worst seam on the kit. Very tricky to get to. Took a little bit of filling as well. I have got the front cowling on the front. It's only friction fitted for now, just to test fit it. But yeah, these front sections do need a little bit of work. Like I say, I did have to put a little bit of say glue on there as a filler, just to take care of the seam. And that's it. It literally is the worst part of the kit, and it's nothing bad at all. So I highly recommend this kit if you're looking for a nice fun build, something quite quick. It's a fairly big aircraft in 32nd without being crazy big. It is one of the prettier planes in my opinion. I do like the elongated 190D. It is a pretty looking aircraft, very, very sleek. And again, literally we have to go all around. Anywhere we glued last time, we're going to have to clean up, whether it be with a sander, a buffer, whatever. We are going to have to go around and clear it up because it will leave molten plastic. It might leave a seam line. We need to sand it all, take care of it. Now, it is very light sanding. You don't want to go crazy. We certainly don't want to be reprofiling parts. Again, another pretty difficult seam on the back is this one. So, just some gentle sanding without going mad. And then a little tricky one just over the binnacle on the cockpit. So we've got a UMP 240 thinny stick in there. And a little bit of putty. Now, I'm not using this to actually fill a gap. What I'm doing is, where there's a natural panel line at the back here, I'm going to pop this in. There's a little bit at the front as well. Let it dry for a minute or two. It does dry very quick, this filet of putty. And I'm going to moisten the cotton bud by definitely not licking it. Didn't lick at all. And then we're going to wipe it off and leave that in the panel line. And what we can do then is run the cotton bud sideways and it will kind of put an artificial panel line in the putty. So rather than having an unequal or uneven panel line, we can make it a bit more equal now by going over it with this. So there you go. Back end, a little bit of filler needed. Sorry, a little bit of sanding needed. No filler at all on the back end. Really, really good. Everywhere we closed up major parts of the fuselage all went together really, really well. Very, very pressed. It went together well. We've got the horizontal stabilizers on now, the elevators too. And obviously the rudder's in place on the back end as per the kit. Using a combination of sponge and thinny sticks, alternating between. Like I say, don't go crazy with the sanding. Just take your time. Now, to glue this rear section on the back, we need to hold it without getting any molten plastic out while we glue it. So I had a brainwave. I joined a couple of elastic bands together. I thought what I'll do is we'll put it over the wings, we'll put it over the horizontal stabilizers. And what I can do then is, using tension on the wing, by moving the elastic band in or out, we can alter it so the tail sits flush and straight. And then we can glue it without having to hold it like so. So I'm just moving the band round. I'm just getting it to sit straight where I want it so the gap is equal each side. And then the tail sits straight. Once we're happy, we get some Tamiya Extra Thin mix. Let the capillary reaction carry it all the way around. And because we're not putting any pressure on, we shouldn't get any molten plastic coming out the side. Just checking everything straight. So this is one drawing that was bothering me, thinking, oh my god, it's going to be a bit of a nightmare, and it actually fitted in really well. Went together really, really well. So it didn't take a lot of glue at all. I think I just went round it once and then very lightly again. And while that's drying, might as well get our props together. Again, nice clean parts out the box as well. No real difficult parts to clean up. Very clean. Even though it's just knocking on a bit, this kit now. I think it's about 20 odd years old. It still went together with no problem. We're going to pop this intake on the side as well. That's been sanded nice and flush as well. So we're just going to pop that in place. Get a little dab of glue in there and then give it a... It needs a little bit of a push, this one. It doesn't fit perfect. But again, with the capillary action, carry it. Push it in place and hold it for a bit. You see it's springing out just a touch. So while we're holding it, have a bit of pressure, put a little bit more glue in. Just keep the pressure on and hold it while it dries. Now, rescribing. We're going to have to rescribe. So I've got some Dymo tapes. Remember the old label makers used to make where you turn the dial to the letter and then click it and it would emboss the label? Well, this is the tape out of that. This is just some cheap rip-off copy stuff. And because it's self-adhesive and quite thick, it makes the ideal rescribing tape. So line it up where your panel line should be. I've got my Holly rescriber, which is my scriber of choice. Trust me, if you can find these Holly scribers, get them. They are fantastic. I'm just going to rescribe any lost panel lines where we've been sanding. This one's not very pronounced on here, so I opted just to give this a light rescribe as well. I think I had lost a little bit sanding it. But the Dymo tape works really well. There is a high Q tape as well. I do have some of that, but I prefer the Dymo tape because it's a lot more sticky. On the front end, because of the angle of the wing, you can take the tape around the edge of the wing and leave a bit of a pronounced edge, and that way you can get your scribe around. Once you're done rescribing, load your brush up with some of your glue, your Tamiya Extra Thin or what have you, and just run it over the freshly scribed piece, and it will take the sharp raised edge look off the scribing. It's a very old trick for aircraft, and it does work. It just softens the edge. You don't need a lot at all, and it will soften the edge and lessen the look of it and not make it stand out. Now, rescribing is one of my most hated tasks on model aircraft, but on this, it was really easy to do. Very minimal to do, and really nice and simple. Just going to go around with the buffer now and get all the plastic to a nice high even shine now. This isn't a car. We don't want a really rough body. We just want this one nice and smooth. So it's going to go over the buffer. Everything's nicely dried now. The seam on the tail section is absolutely fantastic. Very happy with that. And we're going to buff it up and get it nice and shiny, ready for some primer. So, yeah, UMP buffers, again, another one of my favourite tools, my favourite buffer. And this is also now we can get glue marks off. If you glued a few areas, you can get a bit of glue off or what have you. This is where you need to go around for like a final inspection to make sure everything is okay. So before we can prime, we need to retouch up our cockpit. Because obviously we've been rescribing and sanding. We're taking some of the inner colour out. Now, we're going to put a canopy over the top. And if you think about where the canopy sits, it will be that colour underneath while the rest of the aircraft is painted in the exterior colours. So we've painted all that again, like we did earlier. And I'm just test fitting all of this. And what I want to do is mount this nose on so I can spray it all in one go. So I just put some light super glue on there just to hold it in place. While we're here, we've got the clear parts off. I'm just cleaning up the sprue connection points with UMP sanders and then finalising it with the buffer. Now, the front screen, we're going to Tamiya Extra Thin in, but the back one, we want to close it for now while we paint. We've masked it up with the Edward mask set. This is pre-cut, so that you peel it off and stick it in place. There's no hard thing to do here at all. Lay it in place, get a little bit of extra thin mix on our brush. I'm just going to touch it to where it mounts so that the capillary action carry it through and then leave it the hell alone. So we can glue the front one in permanently now, no problem. but always leave a way to get in there. So the rear one we're going to PVA glue on with glue and glaze. And we also want to move it. We're going to close it up for now so we can paint it. Later on, when it's finished, I want to display it open. There we go. There's our canopy in place perfectly. Give it a little tap to make sure she's seated fully home. And then masking up the rear one. Again, pre-cut mask set. Follow the instructions. You can't go wrong with these. These are well worth the money. You can do the old route of putting your tape over and using a fresh blade and cutting it. Well, for the £5–6 these are, you get the front and rear canopy mask. You also get some wheel masks as well. They're worth the money. They are. So 4 sections for each pane. There's a little seam across the top, as you can see there. And it's just a case of putting one piece in, line it up, follow it all the way around. You'll need to reposition these several times. They can be a little bit tricky. But trust me, these are worth their weight in gold. They really are, especially if you've got some of the heavy bombers like the Focke-Wulf Fw190D-9 with dozens and dozens of windows, or a Zero, things like that. These are well worth the money. Like I said, they're not that dear and they save a lot of time. So there we go. It fills in all the exterior. It does say on the kit instructions for the mask to use liquid mask. We're not going to. We're going to use normal masking tape. I am not a fan of liquid mask at all. I always find it does more bad than good. And there we go, with it masked off. You can see how little of the canopy is actually painted. So to glue this in place temporarily, we've got some glue and glaze. We're just going to put a few strategic dabs across the side. Like I say, all I want this to do for now is hold it in place while we paint it. So we just put some dabs in place. Grab the canopy. Get it located perfectly shut, press it down, get it all nice and straight, get a moistened cotton bud, which again I didn't lick. Wipe off any excess glue. Later on, all we need to get this off is a sharp scalpel blade just underneath, and it'll pop off with ease, and we can glue it in place where we want it. Final touch, we're going to get some Pro Scale Paint's pre-paint degreaser on a bit of kitchen paper and rub all over the fuselage to get any fingerprints, crisp fingerprints, sandwich fingerprints, anything I eat in the cave really. Any nasties off there, any chemicals, and that way we know our primer will adhere. We've got no actual real, well, we have got a little bit of masking to do for the yellow, but we're not going to be masking for the camo because it's all freehand. So we just want a nice, clean, sterile area for our primer. And our primer of choice today is Mr. Hobby, Mr. Servicer 1500 Black. So we're going to go all around and get a nice light coat of primer and then go back and add a second coat until we get a nice even black coating. Now, well, the tricky part of these aircraft is holding the bloody things while you paint them. So what I tend to do is hold underneath, spray all underneath, then grab it by the tail and do all the top. By that time the bottom is all dry, you can place it down on the bench and then spray the tail right at the end. That's how I tend to do it. So make sure we're getting all those like drop flaps, all the landing gear bay as well, all the edges of the wings all the way around. And as always, we're not putting thick coats of paint down, just build it up nice and slow until you get nice even coverage. And this is where any flaws will show now. So if you can see seam lines you're happy with, or panel lines that maybe haven't quite been filled enough, like we filled with the putty, or any scribe lines you're happy with, this is where you get to address them. The primer will accentuate them no end. If there's any glue marks you've missed on the fuselage, this is your chance to get them. It's up to you how thorough you want to be, but again, you get out of what you put in. So I was pretty happy with everything. There was nothing really to address at all. I've done actually a pretty good job, to be fair, all the way around. I think that's down to how good the kit is really over my skill. It is an absolutely fantastic kit, I will give it that. As you can see, I've got it by the rudder now, the tail, while I spray all the sides. When you come to the canopy, don't go too heavy, just be nice and light and quick over it, because there is a gap there in the mid and the front section, sorry, the rear and the front section, so you don't want to spray and paint through, getting all your interior or all over spray on the inside of the glass. So just take your time and don't be too heavy-handed with it. So quite a task priming these things, and painting is even more so, as you'll see later on with all the weather effects. And there we go. With that dry underneath, we can pop it on the bench, or we just give the tail a quick couple of coats of primer. And then we can gently spin it round on the bench. Underneath is dry now. You can just see the tail there. I've not quite got primer. And there we go. So that's how I do it now. Quite often you get a hole where you can shove a pole of that, but it doesn't always work out well. Now for some paint. So we've got some Mr. Hobby, Mr. Colour RLM76, which is C117. Thinnerest Hobby Level and Thinner, about 60%. And we're going to get all our blue undersurfaces done. So we're going to get our basic camo pattern down first, and then add some weathering effects to it. But for today in this video, we're just going to get our paint down. So luckily the Mr. Colour paints do cover really well over the black, as you can see. And again, we can use the black to add some tonal texture to the area, so we don't have to quite get any recesses and what have you. And we can also use it for exterior paint effects as well by not getting full coverage here and there. So you can use it to your benefit, but make sure you're thorough. You get all the nooks and crannies. Make sure you get around the leading edges and the back edges of the wings as well. It's very easy to forget. We will have to leave a natural demarcation on the leading edge, which I'll show you how to do later on. I've sped everything up for now just so we can get through it a bit quicker. But it's a case of just slow, methodical painting until we get full coverage of everything. As you can see, it does cover really well with a couple of light coats. It pretty covers, well, pretty much sorted. As you can see, we've got some really nice surface detail underneath. Sadly, no real riveting on this one. There is a HGW rivet set forward, but I opted against it. Like I say, I want to keep this one nice and simple. So it's blue underneath, blue up the sides with some light and dark green camo on it. It's not the most complex of patterns, but it does take a bit of work to do. And it's all freehand as well. So it is a bit of a task to paint, but good fun at the same time. So right now we've got nowhere we need to worry about not getting paint. Now, we will be in and out of the same paint several times to touch up, and we need to lighten tones to get the weathering effects. So I would recommend mixing up your base colour in a medicine cup, preferably ones you've got lids for, or any other bottles you've got lids for, and keeping the colour at hand because you will be back and forth to the colours. You'll need to touch areas up, we're going to have to lighten and darken tones, so having it to hand is a lot easier. But really nice camo effect on this. You'll see it come to fruition a little bit later on. Like I say, because we've got nothing to go on, we're on a blank canvas, we don't need to be worried about any overspray just yet. Once we start to use the greens, we're going to start being a little bit more careful. And here we go. This is the RLM. Let me see. It is 82, which is Mr. Colour 122. And we're going to get our camo pattern down. As you can see on the top right, I have my camo pattern cheat sheet there. That is the sheet that came with my aftermarket decals. I'm not getting the pattern down perfect. I'm just getting the pattern down where it's needed to be. Now we need to be careful of the blue now because we don't want to get any overspray on it. So we've got to keep the angle of the airbrush appropriate. And like I say, I'm just going to get the pattern down vague. We're going to go past where it's needed to get the coverage. And again, make sure you get the leading edges and the far edges of the wings as well. Like I say, we're not trying to get the pattern perfect, but it is going to take a bit of care here to get it roughly where we want it. And then not affect the blue as well. So this is where a good airbrush is needed, as well as a bit of skill using the airbrush. So you need to be very, very confident in what you're doing. Joe did a fantastic job for his first time doing this, I have to say. And it was nice to see that I hadn't lost my touch either. You don't tend to do spraying like this with cars. This is very purposeful. Like I say, I'm just going to get the basic pattern down first. Now, there's lots of ways of doing this painting. This is my way. This is simply my way. You can pre-shade. You can do mottling effect. And that way you put in a different colour paint under this to highlight the panel lines and what have you. You can mottle the area with different colours of mottled paint like whites, browns, blacks, etc. And then spraying your top coat on thin will show those different tones show through. I've always preferred to post-shade. Always have found it much more easier to do because you don't need to be worried at this stage of getting the coverage just right. You can just concentrate on getting the camo pattern down and we can come back in later with the paint to get the effects correct. So, like I say, we're using our instructions there and using prominent points on the aircraft. So, like on the ailerons or the flaps or any prominent marks you can see on the fuselage as a guide. as to where we're putting our paint. And then we just apply a thin line where we need it. And then we can infill the rest as we go. As you see, it is a nice striking colour. We are going to make this a lot vaguer as we go because we will weather it. Some of these aircraft do have an actual hard edge pattern, which you would literally mask up. Some are soft edge. This is a softer edge pattern, so there's no need to mask, but you will need good control with your airbrush to make sure that you get the demarcation crisp without being perfect. So like I say, with this one, we're not being exact as to where the camera pattern's going, because we'll do that with the RLM 83 colour, which is coming next. So the wings and the elevators done, and the horizontal stabilizer, we now need to concentrate on the upper part of the fuselage. This is where things start to get a bit tricky now, because this is where you need to be very careful. So using your side profile shot, you can see there, you can see where I need to apply the camo. And we've got two different colours. We've got a dark brown and a dark green and a light green that need to kind of intermix together. They go alternating in a splinter cam. So this is where you need to take your time here, because we don't want to ruin all the blue as well. And this is why I was saying mix the blue so you've got it at hand, so that you can touch up areas later on, which we will have to do doing this. So just get your pattern down, get your coverage of paint. Getting all those little recesses and what have you. So I concentrate on one section at a time, flipping the aircraft around. And then, like I say, use references on the body of the aircraft, on the fuselage. So you can see like a bit of glass or a panel line or an access point, and you can see that's where the camo goes from. That's your reference point to use. Like I said, I'm just feathering the edge here, just to try and get it in. And onto the tail. Now the tail is a bit more tricky, because it does go over a little bit more pronounced. We have got a yellow rudder on ours, and a yellow panel underneath the front cowling as well. So we'll mask and paint those later on. And there we go. There's most of the light green done now, the RLM 82. I'm just going around touching everything up, getting all those cowlings there as well. Making sure we got all the lighter green where we need it. As you can see, I've not been trying to get that monoblock green. I don't mind leaving a little bit of green here and there. We want to add paint effects, and we'll do that later on. So we're not trying to get full coverage, we're just trying to get our camo in place. With the light green done, we're on to the RLM 83 now, which is a darker green, and this is where we need to get our pattern perfect. So again, using those references on the instructions of the decals, we'll get our actual camo pattern now where we want it. So just study them, have a good look where it goes. Again, use the reference points of panel lines or any way you can see. And there we go, and then just infill the rest of it. And again, don't be worried about getting it first time. Just do a little bit, move on. You can come back later on when the paint dries. Just trying to get it. You can always come back with the other colour later and touch it back up if you want. Everything is fixable on this. Nothing is irreversible. If you paint something wrong, you can paint it again. It's fixable, trust me. And again, using the instructions to find our panel line, sorry, our demarcation line, we can get our darker green pattern on as well. So good airbrushing skills. This will make you a much better airbrusher, trust me. When you move on to different genres, whether you're going from aircraft to cars, or from cars to aircraft or armour, every one of those different builds of different genres will improve your build in no end. Trust me, been there and done it. I've built most things out there. There's nothing I've not really built. I think trains, about one of them I think I've not built. And I'm not building a train anytime soon. And they've all helped in some way or another. It makes you appreciate things and realise how things are done differently. And this kind of painting will improve your airbrush in no end. It will make you much more confident, because you've got to be a bit more exact. Especially on this section here now, because we need to spray the green to the wing roots without affecting the blue. Now, because we're putting a darker colour over a lighter colour, there will be a little bit of overspray. But we'll come back in with the RLM 76 later, the blue, and touch it up. Hence me saying leave those little micro medicine cups with painting, because you'll be switching colour every 5 minutes to touch things up. There we go. There's our basic wing pattern done. We can then reproduce this on the side as well, exactly like we did before. And I've missed this. I generally have missed this. I did thoroughly enjoy building this aircraft. It was good fun. I think I helped Joe get through his and he helped me get through mine. So it was good to do. And I'm hoping that I'll enjoy them to the point I keep going. Like I said, I've got Trumpeter's P-47 next. There's a review on the channel, on Patreon, and be on ISM soon as well. That I am looking forward to getting back to. So that will be the next aircraft build I do. Got a few bits of aftermarket on the way. I've got some wheels, some seatbelts, and a mast set on the way. It's going to be a bit more of an in-depth build than this one, because there's a full engine on it. There's nearly 5 times as many parts in there. So it will definitely be a bit more of an interesting build as well. But like I say, using our references there in front of us as a guide, we can apply our camo pattern. You can see just how precise you need to be with the airbrush. And that's going to get even worse later when we're doing our weathering effects. You'll see the kind of airbrush control you can get from doing this. This is what I always say. It's always worth giving another genre of modelling a go. Aircraft, armour and cars are probably the main 3, with figures and that, and ships and what have you behind. So, you know, delve out your comfort zone every now and then. I just got a mental block of aircraft. I have no idea what caused it. And I just really struggled with them. So I was worried about this build, because this is a kit I want to do for quite some time. That I was going to stall on it. But once I got to this stage, I thought, yep, this is the funnest bit for me now, the painting. We can get this going. So, by the look of it, we've got our blue back in now. We've got the RLM 76 back in, and we're going to touch up some of the areas where the green's gone a little bit too far. We've got a little bit of overspray or what have you, just with the blue. So just very lightly feather the edge. You can see the one wiggling it around. We don't want a hard edge, we want a nice soft edge. I'm just going to clean up that demarcation along the side until we're happy. Same on the tail. You can see a little bit of green overspray on the tail there, so we can get rid of that. And underneath as well, anywhere we might have just got a little bit of overspray, we can touch it up. But again, now we need to be careful not to get overspray on the green. So you just need to take your time. You see me there just trying to fill that little bit of blue in. We've got a little bit of green overspray. And there we go. And that's it. That's our basic camo pattern done. There's still a whole load to do. But that's us for part 2 today. We'll come back with part 3 for some of the more challenging mottling and paint effects we need to do. And there we go. So a multitude of camo colours there. Definitely a skill set I've not done for quite some time. And if you're thinking about doing aircraft, seriously, have a think about it. It is good fun. You've only got to try it. You don't have to buy an expensive kit. You can pick aircraft up kits up for like £7 if you go for Airfix 172. They're not expensive, and you never know. You just might enjoy it, and you might pick up some different skills along the way. So always worth a look, because like I say, you just never know what you'll enjoy. You just never know. But yeah, we're well on the way to getting this done. So we'll be back for part 3 very, very soon. As always, make sure to leave a comment if you've watched. Let me know what you think of the video, and I will see you all very soon for part 3. Enjoy the rest of the night, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.